In the vast wind-swept plains of Mongolia, a storm was brewing, one that would reshape the world forever. A child, born to a tribe in turmoil, was destined to become a force of nature so powerful that even the most advanced civilizations would tremble. This wasn't just the rise of any ruler, it was the birth of a legend. Betrayed by his own people, abandoned by his family, this boy named Temüjin would stop at nothing to turn the tides of fate. Through a life filled with death, betrayal, and relentless survival, he would transform from an outcast to the most feared conqueror the world had ever known. Genghis Khan wasn't just a name, it was a living nightmare for those who stood in his way. But what was it that made him so unstoppable? What secrets did this savage genius unlock that allowed him to unite warring tribes and create an empire stretching across the known world? This is the story of a man who refused to be broken, a story of blood, fire, and a relentless hunger to change the course of history. Join us on our journey back in time to witness the making of an empire. In the vast harsh lands of Mongolia, where winter winds howl through the steppes and summers scorch the earth, a child was born into an uncertain future. Temüjin, later known as Genghis Khan, entered the world around 1162. His birth, marked by a series of omens and prophecies, set the stage for a life that would reshape history. His father, Yasugei, was a respected leader among the Mongol tribes, while his mother, Holun, was a woman of remarkable strength, fiercely protective of her children. But Temüjin's early years were far from secure. Even before he could speak, the Mongol world had already begun to show him the cruelty and violence that would define much of his life. His father, Yasugei, was poisoned by a rival tribe, leaving the young boy's family vulnerable to attacks and betrayal. The fragile alliances that held the Mongol tribes together began to crumble, and Temüjin's life would be shaped by the desperate fight for survival in a fractured world. After the death of Yasugei, Temüjin's world collapsed. His family was cast out by the very tribe that had once protected them. Stripped of their status, they became destitute, forced to survive by scavenging and hunting for whatever scraps they could find. Temüjin's mother, Holun, became the pillar of their existence, fiercely protecting her children while teaching Temüjin the vital lessons of loyalty, strength, and resilience. As a young boy, Temüjin experienced the cruelty of betrayal firsthand. His tribe, once loyal to his father, abandoned them without hesitation. This early betrayal would ignite a fire in him, a thirst for power and unity that would drive him throughout his life. But in these dire moments, a seed was planted, the realization that to survive, he needed to rise above the petty rivalries that fractured his people. This lesson would become the foundation for his future conquests. As Temüjin grew older, he began to form his own identity outside the shadow of his father. By his early teens, he had already begun to gather a small group of followers, including his blood brother, Jamuka, with whom he would share a lifelong, complicated bond. Together, they began raiding rival tribes, earning respect for their courage and ambition. But with this new power came new challenges. Temüjin's loyalty to his companions would often be tested, and as his strength grew, so did the number of enemies he made. It was around this time that Temüjin's leadership qualities began to shine. Unlike other tribal leaders, he was deeply committed to the idea of meritocracy, rewarding loyalty and ability, not just birthright. This would set him apart from many of the other Mongol chieftains, who ruled with iron-fisted, hereditary authority. In the course of a pivotal battle, Temüjin's friendship with Jamuka would be shattered. A dispute over the treatment of captives, as well as philosophical differences on leadership, led to a rift between the two. Jamuka's brutal treatment of prisoners was in stark contrast to Temüjin's belief in mercy. The betrayal was profound, as Jamuka, once his closest ally, turned against him and allied himself with the forces that would seek to crush Temüjin's rising power. The breakup of their friendship was not only personal but political. Temüjin was forced into hiding, fighting for survival once again. Yet, it was in this moment of adversity that his leadership grew sharper. He began to understand the importance of alliances, the need for careful strategy, and how to forge bonds that would endure. Temüjin's bitterness from the betrayal would fuel his ambition like never before. Temüjin's warlord status began to solidify as he attracted more followers, men who believed in his vision of a united Mongol empire. Unlike traditional leaders, Temüjin's army was made up of warriors who were loyal to him, not to their family or clan. This new approach to leadership allowed him to build a highly disciplined and effective force. His warriors were not just followers, they were part of a brotherhood forged through mutual respect and shared ambition. By his late 20s, Temüjin was leading a growing faction of Mongols, his reputation as a fierce and fair leader spreading far and wide. But even as his power grew, he was not immune to the dangers that came with it. His enemies, some old, some new, constantly plotted against him. Yet, with each betrayal, Temüjin grew stronger, his understanding of politics and warfare more refined. Genghis Khan was not simply a warlord with a thirst for power. His mind extended far beyond the steppes of Mongolia. He had a grand vision: to unite all the Mongol tribes under one banner, transcending the old tribal rivalries and forging an empire that would rival any in history. His ambition was nothing short of revolutionary. He began to implement reforms that were unheard of in Mongol society. He created a code of laws, known as the Yasa, which governed everything from military conduct to the treatment of civilians. He encouraged trade and communication between the various tribes, seeing that the future of the Mongols lay in unity and progress. This was the birth of Genghis Khan's true legacy, an empire not built on brute force alone, but on a system of order, trade, and innovation. By the time Temüjin was in his early 30s, he was recognized as a powerful leader, but his claim to ultimate power was still being contested by rival chieftains. His final ascension to the title of Genghis Khan came after a dramatic series of battles and political maneuvers. In 1206, after years of brutal warfare, Temüjin was formally declared Genghis Khan, which means universal ruler. This moment would mark the beginning of the Mongol Empire, one that would stretch from the steppes of Mongolia to the farthest corners of the known world. However, his rise to power was not without sacrifices. He faced constant rebellion from those who feared his unifying vision. Genghis Khan's ascension was built not just on bloodshed, but on a deep understanding of his enemies and a unique ability to adapt to shifting circumstances. He would need to navigate a delicate balance of diplomacy, war, and alliance-making if he was to create the empire he dreamed of. Once crowned, Genghis Khan focused on building a military force like no other. His army was a reflection of his ability to understand both the human heart and the mechanics of warfare. His military tactics were ahead of his time, utilizing speed, deception, and psychological warfare to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Genghis Khan's forces were not composed merely of Mongols. He recruited soldiers from all over the world, including Chinese, Turks, and Persians, giving him a diverse and adaptable fighting force. His army was known for its discipline, unity, and incredible mobility. This army would later become the force that would sweep through Asia and Europe, leaving destruction and awe in its wake. In 1209, Genghis Khan's first major military campaign as the leader of the Mongols began. The target, the Tangut Kingdom, located in what is now northwestern China. The Tangut people had long been enemies of the Mongols, and they refused to submit to Genghis Khan's rule. What followed would be a ruthless campaign in which Genghis Khan employed every military tactic in his arsenal, showing his enemies the full force of his vision. The Tangut Kingdom fell quickly to the Mongol onslaught, but not without significant bloodshed. Genghis Khan's method of warfare was as brutal as it was effective. Cities were razed, and countless lives were lost. It was a clear message to the world: resistance to Genghis Khan would be met with annihilation. Despite his undeniable success, Genghis Khan knew that his conquest was only the beginning. The weight of leadership, the responsibility to his people, and the constant threat of rebellion haunted him. But his ambitions remained unshaken. He understood that the power he wielded had to be maintained through constant vigilance and reform. He also knew that the unification of the Mongol tribes was just the first step in a much greater plan. His mind was already turning toward the lands beyond the steppes. By 1211, Genghis Khan was not merely a ruler of Mongol tribes, he was a force of nature. Having already united the fractured Mongol tribes, his gaze turned outward. His hunger for expansion had been stoked by the bloodshed of the Tangut conquest. The moment the Tangut kingdom fell, Genghis Khan realized that his reach could stretch far beyond Mongolia. He set his sights on the Jin dynasty in northern China. The Jin were rich, powerful, and deeply entrenched in a world of politics and luxury, everything Genghis Khan had fought against. He was ready to bring them to their knees. This was more than just a military campaign. For Genghis Khan, it was a moment to prove that his Mongol warriors, though born from humble beginnings, could stand against the most advanced civilizations of their time. His army, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, would sweep into Jin territory with brutal efficiency. But the task was not simple. The Jin had powerful fortresses, advanced military technology, and seasoned generals. Genghis Khan would have to use everything in his arsenal to defeat them. The Jin capital, Zhongdu, modern Beijing, stood as a symbol of everything Genghis Khan desired to topple: opulence, corruption, and an unyielding belief in its invincibility. To take this city would not just mean a victory over a rival dynasty, it would mark a shift in the balance of power across all of Asia. As Genghis Khan's army approached the city in 1213, they were met with fierce resistance. Genghis Khan, however, was a master strategist. Understanding that the Jin strongholds could not be easily breached, he adapted his tactics. Rather than engage in direct battle, he ordered a series of devastating sieges. The Mongols deployed their famed siege engines, massive trebuchets, battering rams, and catapults, to break down the city's walls. The Mongols were also experts in psychological warfare, and the sight of their massive siege weapons, combined with ruthless tactics, sowed fear within the Jin ranks. When Zhongdu finally fell in 1215, the Jin dynasty was dealt a devastating blow. Genghis Khan had shown the world the full might of the Mongol war machine. But Genghis Khan was more than a mere conqueror. He was a visionary, someone who understood that in order to build an empire, he had to have more than just a fierce army. He needed allies, and he needed to establish the Mongols as a legitimate and respected force in the world. One of his most remarkable achievements was his diplomatic strategy, which was equally as important as his military tactics. While his enemies knew him for his ruthlessness, those who cooperated with him saw a different side of the Khan, a man who valued loyalty, order, and above all, a sense of justice. In his court, he employed skilled diplomats and spies who helped him navigate the complex political landscape of Asia. His diplomatic alliances with the Khwarezmian Empire, a prosperous state to the west, allowed him to maintain pressure on the Jin and secure trade routes vital to his empire's survival. But Genghis Khan's ability to negotiate and manage rivalries didn't stop with traditional diplomacy. He was known for his open-mindedness when it came to religion, incorporating ideas from various belief systems into his rule. He encouraged freedom of worship, a stark contrast to many rulers of the time. This helped foster stability within his empire and ensured that conquered peoples were not just subjugated but integrated into Mongol society. Though Genghis Khan's diplomatic strategies had secured him many allies, some empires were more resistant to submission. The Khwarezmian Empire, located in present-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, was one such enemy. Led by Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad, the Khwarezmian ruler miscalculated the Mongol leader's tolerance for insults and betrayal. In 1218, Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan to the Khwarezmian Empire. Instead of being met with the customary welcome, the caravan was attacked, its members killed, and its goods seized. This act of treachery enraged Genghis Khan, and he decided to respond in the only way he knew how, with overwhelming force. The Mongol invasion of the Khwarezmian Empire was swift and merciless. Genghis Khan, with his unparalleled military acumen, laid waste to the Khwarezmian cities, using his army's superior tactics, such as feigned retreats and surprise attacks, to outmaneuver the enemy. The cities of Bokhara, Samarkand, and Nishapur fell one by one. The fall of these prosperous cities served as a brutal reminder to the world: defy Genghis Khan, and your civilization would be erased. Samarkand was one of the most renowned cities of the ancient world, a cultural center of knowledge, commerce, and art. To conquer it was a tremendous prize. However, when Genghis Khan's forces arrived at its gates in 1220, they were met by the full force of the city's defenses. The Mongols began their siege with the precision and discipline that had become their trademark. But it wasn't just the Mongol war machines that struck fear into the hearts of the defenders, it was the ruthless efficiency with which the Mongols operated. After a long siege, Samarkand was finally breached. The city's population was slaughtered or enslaved, and its once grand infrastructure was reduced to rubble. Genghis Khan's message was clear: any resistance to Mongol rule would lead to total annihilation. Though Genghis Khan's military successes were unprecedented, the cost of his campaigns was also staggering. His empire, while expanding at a rapid pace, faced challenges of its own. The sheer size of the territories he conquered made it difficult to govern effectively, and maintaining control over the various cultures, religions, and peoples within his empire was no easy task. But Genghis Khan's leadership was both pragmatic and visionary. He divided his empire into several military governorships, each ruled by a trusted lieutenant. This decentralized form of governance allowed him to maintain control over vast distances while also fostering loyalty among his followers. His leadership style was based on merit, and those who proved themselves in battle or administration were rewarded with positions of power, regardless of their background. Before turning to the Khwarezmian Empire, Genghis Khan had already turned his attention southward to the Western Xia dynasty, located in what is now northwestern China. In 1209, after years of skirmishes, Genghis Khan finally launched a full-scale invasion of the Western Xia, motivated by both revenge and the desire for more territory. The Western Xia were no match for the Mongol war machine. Their fortresses were destroyed, their armies scattered, and the dynasty was forced to submit to Mongol authority. However, the war with Western Xia had left him deeply scarred. As he expanded his empire, he became even more relentless in his pursuit of enemies, ensuring that no rival could ever rise against him again. The downfall of the Khwarezmian Empire was a significant moment in Genghis Khan's reign. After his forces laid waste to the empire, Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad fled westward, pursued by Mongol forces. He eventually died in exile, but the empire he once ruled was left in ruins, a stark reminder of Genghis Khan's ruthlessness. The death of the Shah was not just a personal victory, it marked the total destruction of an empire that had once defied Mongol authority. By 1225, Genghis Khan's empire stretched across Asia, from the steppes of Mongolia to the borders of Persia and China. The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous empire in history, and its influence was felt across the known world. But Genghis Khan's legacy was not just in the land he conquered. He established a cultural and economic exchange that spanned continents, connecting the east to the west. The Silk Road, once a series of fragmented trade routes, became a unified artery for commerce and ideas under Mongol control. Genghis Khan's final years were marked by the ongoing consolidation of power and an ever-expanding empire. However, with the death of his beloved wife, Borte, Genghis Khan's heart grew heavy, and he began to contemplate his legacy. As his empire reached its zenith, he knew that it could not endure without careful stewardship. But before his death in 1227, Genghis Khan would complete his final conquest. The world had witnessed the rise of a man who, once an outcast, had become the most powerful ruler the world had ever known. As he looked toward the future, he understood that his empire would endure long after his death.